And
Okay, well, excited everyone's here. Yeah, we're gonna go through E2E test in Meshery. So feel free to ask any questions you want along the way. Feel free to interrupt, and we can make this kind
and
of
like,
interactive.
can anyone confirm if the volume for Ian's voice is too low for me only, or if you also are encountering the same issue?
Can you hear me now?
The
Is
voice
that
volume is like pretty good here, I guess.
okay? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so welcome to Meshery. Today's agenda is essentially trying to give you enough context and enough threads to pull to start to contribute to the end-to-end test using Playwright. So the goals are understanding the test structure or architecture as it exists today, the contribution process, and just some of the best practices that we have in this space today. So with that, what is end-to-end test? It's good to have that kind of under our belt. It's to test or simulate real user interactions in the browser. So what that specifically means is that we're probably a little bit more familiar with unit tests. Unit tests are kind of aimed at picking off the functionality of, say, one React component or a function. This is more about stringing those components together into how the user actually interacts with the product to really verify the full flow. So it's not only the UI, but also the backend integration with the APIs. That kind of consists of an integration test. So it's a little bit more broad in its sense than a unit test is more scoped. We use Playwright. A couple of reasons. There's multi-browser support kind of out of the box without much needed configurations there. It's fast and furious, so it allows parallel execution. So our CI/CD pipelines aren't bloated with waiting for these automation tests to finish. There's some good dev tooling and ecosystem around Playwright. It has really good documentation, lots of good examples online, good tooling if you're using VS Code to kind of build a test from scratch. And we'll be kind of going over those today as well. So why we use it? So it's essentially to prevent regressions in our workflows. So we're validating functionality across two configurations. So as you dive into Meshery, we have a concept of like a local and remote provider for authentication into the UI. And we don't necessarily want features that are going into master branch that may unintentionally break one of these cases while you're, building a feature on the other side. So it essentially boils down to improving our confidence in every PR that we merge and how we use it. So I'm going to flash over to our code base. So essentially, I'll show you where our tests are located in kind of the Playwright projects config, and then we'll kind of bounce around a little bit in some of the documentation. And I take a little pause to see if there's any questions so far while I'm switching screens. Okay, so when you clone Meshery down, you'll have this UI folder here. And as you're going into that, we should have a tests in E2E, and you'll see all of our spec files there. So that's going to be where the tests are located. And then if you scroll back out to the root level, you're going to have the Playwright configurations that I have up here on the right-hand side. Right there. So with that, you can see the projects. So we have, I think, 3 or 4 different projects. One is just a global setup. So that is to authenticate into Meshery itself. And then we have that prepared authentication state used in the 2 different main projects. So we have a local provider case and we have a remote provider case. So that's kind of the high level architecture of how things are structured today. And now I'm going to switch screens and go through just at a high level that document that Vivek shared already, our contribution guide. So this is where you're going to want to start once you clone down the repo itself. So scrolling to the top, again, there's some prereqs there that you should kind of make sure of. A lot of these are different resources, so like adapters aren't necessarily needed, clusters aren't necessarily needed for some of the test. What is needed if you're provider cases. So scrolling down, again, a call out there. Some of these prereqs are just for specific tests. So if you don't have those resources set up, some tests will break if you just, set up and run all the tests. There will be some failing tests because these resources are missing. Okay, so to set things up locally, we have this native OS build. We also have a Docker build base, but this OS build, native build is recommended. So essentially just walks you through building the UI, building the server, and then running the server. Once you're at that point, you install the Playwright dependencies, and then this is our command to just run all the tests that exist today. So one kind of tidbit, if you are using VS Code that I find quite handy when you're developing is this Playwright extension. It's on just the marketplace. It's a free extension from Microsoft itself. It has kind of all the flags that you would run on command line just built into your IDE. So it's an integrated experience. So it's really nice. It shows you all the tests here. It has a sub panel here where you can see the projects. So you can run your setup. You can run remote provider case or local only. You can run it in different contexts. So whether you just want to see that in the browser, or if you want a trace viewer, which is kind of more like a recording and a step-by-step. And you can actually develop a test here by just hitting record new and going through the flow as you would as a user. And Playwright will pick up those actions and selectors as you go on. So it's pretty cool little tool that you can do to get up to speed pretty quickly without having to fiddle around with different UI flags or really kind of going deep into the Playwright docs. I'm going to switch back here. Shoot. This guy here. Okay. So while you're developing your tests, there are some best practices to keep in mind. One is use stable selectors. So Playwright does have like a data test ID locator that it will select kind of the component on. And that's kind of what we're steering people towards to use those a little bit more so. When you're automating or auto-generating your test, Playwright will select some funky selectors. So like div nth child 3 is one that we can common see, or some number in there. And that's going to be really flaky and unstable and brittle as we go to use and build more features onto that. Because once your DOM changes, it's not going to be the third child or the nth child anymore, and things are going to break. So use stable selectors and don't be afraid to go find the component that you're needing to select and add that in there, because we don't have a lot of support or a lot of robust data test IDs in place right now, whether that's in Meshery or our design system Systent. So those two areas are a little bit lacking. So feel free to be empowered to go add those if you need. Another shout out is to keep tests isolated and clean up states between tests. So this is specifically around when we're running a test, say you're adding a connection to in the UI, a connection to the user. You also want to think about how you can remove that connection, because the next time your tests run, that connection, if you don't clean it up, will be there. So that can kind of poison the state across the different test executions, whether that's on CI/CD or locally itself as well. So definitely think about how you can test those and then clean up the state between them. Also respect the CI differences. And one major shout out here is that when you post a PR, that PR or that GitHub workflow that kicks off our test is checking out master branch. And that's just kind of due to security reasons. We have some secrets in those workflows that we don't want exposed to external forks, immediately. We do have a backdoor for trusted contributors and maintainers to run a PR code, the code coming in from a PR through that GitHub workflow if we're testing these tests out to make sure that they're essentially stable. And another call out here is that we do run parallel execution, so with multiple workers. So what that essentially means that if you're running things locally, try to execute them, multiple times to see if you can catch any race conditions between these. Anything that's going to cause some flakiness in CI/CD is going to be just worth its weight in gold to catch that before we're, a couple weeks in and this test is starting to become flaky and then we have to chase it. It's just a lot easier to catch that up front when you have all the context of that test that you just created before you merge it in. And then I do want to shout out this Playwright test viewer. So this is just a web page, and I think I have it up, that you can drag and drop artifacts that are generated on the CI/CD workflow, and you can see how they're executing. So let's say you merged a test or your test is up there. You can essentially go, and I'll go through this slowly. There's a GitHub action UI and server that kicks off these tests. So when you click into one of those, you can see that we have a UI end-to-end test that's triggered. From that standpoint, there's different artifacts that we generate. One is just the logs of the test itself. The other is a trace of the actual test. So you can go ahead and download that, come over to your trace viewer, drop in the zip file, and it will show you how that test executed. So here we can see we have a failure. Here's the UI. Here's, a little bit about that failure, the network conditions. You can also pop this out here and interact with the DOM elements or inspect the DOM as it is. So it's a really handy tool, especially if you can't, run it locally or if it's in CI/CD. So this is kind of a nice little interface that you can use when managing that scenario. Questions at all before I move on? Okay. If not, I'll go through
Yeah.
kind of the contribution flow in this
Quick
space.
question.
Oh, there's a question
Yeah.
or no question.
Yeah, there's a question from me. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully it will inspire others to ask too. So I just had one simple question. I think you already covered it, but let's say I wrote a code for adding a test, and I want to run it in different browsers, like say Chrome and Firefox. Is there a way for me to do it without manually doing it? So some sort of automation that spins up those browser and tests it out for me. And then I also can have a recorded version of them, testing it out and going through and running through the test on those different browsers.
Yeah, so that's going to be, we don't have a lot of different browsers in place right now. We do have an example in the Playwright config that executes against Firefox. Everything that we execute is a Chromium blend of it. But it is real easy to follow the pattern that we have in Playwright config just to say, hey, I want to see how this executes on Chrome or Edge or whatever browser that you want. And you can, just simply uncomment or add that locally, run it, see how it goes there. So yeah, there is, we don't do it out of the box, but there is that ability to easily add it and kind of see. And if there's any, weirdness there that we think we should be able to cover, we can add that. But there's always a balance with it, end-to-end test to test it and improve your confidence instead of just excessively testing across the, every browser in every case, because there is time, considerations. We don't want these to take 30 minutes, 40 minutes and, just to add that little bit of confidence, but you can certainly do that locally when you're developing features and you may think that there's a difference on Chrome versus Firefox, so on and so forth. So yeah, great question.
Thanks a lot. That helps.
Okay, if there's no others, I will go through this flow. So we do have a test plan. Let me see, I have that pulled up here. So you'll see all the end-to-end tests, and don't be, there's quite a few, but there's also the CI or the CLI, so the other client of Meshery. Those tests are also labeled here. And you'll see the test status, so absent or help wanted, assignee. So you can go in here and comment on like, hey, I want to pick this up if there's not an issue already on GitHub itself. You'll see things are in progress, but these are going to be where you can find like, hey, I want to contribute to this process or effort. Where can I, start to make some impact? This is a good place to kind of go and see like, hey, where does this test scenario, how does it work? Let me get familiar with it. Let me assign myself. This is a kind of a one-stop shop for that. After you assign yourself to one of those, set the project up locally, get the Playwright dependencies, and start developing that test. Again, run the test locally, run it not only sequentially, so step by step, but run it in parallel so you make sure that there's not any race conditions there, like we already mentioned. Open the PR. Again, just another note that the CI will pick up code from master branch, not necessarily your incoming code. So we do have a workaround for that. So if we need to, if there's some configurations where we're uploading a file or there's some real differences there, we can really kind of flesh those out with that backdoor. So just, shout out on Slack and we can do that. And then how can you make an impact? So what is valuable effort in this space? Adding tests for uncovered pages or workflows is going to be greatly appreciated. Improving test reliability and coverage. So right now we are kind of ending, hopefully, we have a little bit more in the pipeline as far as like stabilizing the tests that were there. There's a lot of flaky tests, a lot of unstable tests. So that's kind of coming to an end, but there's always going to be some, flakiness that comes up as the UI kind of drifts and, we forget to update the test. So that's going to be greatly appreciated. Additionally, suggesting or implementing any user experience improvements during writing the test. So as you write tests in the automation space, you're going to know that flow like the back of your hand. The pain points that the user has to go through to get the end result or the end goal of that experience are going to be really prevalent to you as you go through it. So do the due diligence and ownership and take it one step further, but say, hey, this is kind of weird in, XYZ flow. Is there some fine tweaks that we can, make this a little bit easier for the end user? That would also be super awesome. I listed the resources here. We went already through the contributor guide. We do have a blog post on Playwright test. It just kind of shout outs what to do, like if a test is starting to fail. The gut reaction is always to like revert something, but we do have a lot of like flaky tests right now. So one call out here is you might see tests labeled as unstable. Unstable tests essentially just mark it differently in the CI/CD so it doesn't come across as failed. So what that allows us to do is that an unstable test, again, maybe we're debugging it on CI environment, completely, and we need those artifacts generated from the GitHub action workflow. So we're kind of piecing things together in that sense. So we don't necessarily have to revert it. We can mark this unstable test, but hopefully we can get it over the mountain or get it back to stable soon, right? So that's going to be one call out there. Let's see. Yeah. I also included the Playwright docs. Again, they're fantastic. They're well written. One page that I'll call out specifically, if I can find it quickly, is best practices. So again, they have quite a bit here that gets you up to speed pretty quickly, and kind of gets some of those best practices to the surface. And it kind of goes through some of the things that we we went through today as well. The E2E test status. So this is going to be the visibility of what our tests, what the execution was on master branch. So we post here every time we merge to master, this will update. So this output, and you'll see this on your PRs as well. So you'll see how many tests passed, failed, and flaked and skipped. And then there'll be a little bit more detail on like what those tests are, the status. So this is that unstable test. Again, that's going to be what you're seeing there. These are just failing at this point. So again, some effort is required to kind of look into that. And then again, another resource is that I'll be looking at throughout the next couple days, weeks, while you guys get up to speed, is this Meshery CI. So post any questions, comments, concerns. I'll be monitoring that as well as other, maintainers, contributors. If you have any troubles setting this up, any questions that come to mind as you're going through this process, definitely shout out there. So just the last kind of call to action. So go set the project up locally, pick a test in the test sheet, post a PR, and make a difference. So that's kind of my presentation today. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Ian. So this is just such a wonderful walkthrough on the end-to-end testing. Now I had recommend folks like who are into Playwright or just want to contribute. If you've got any question around whatever Ian just discussed or any general question on the end-to-end testing in Meshery UI, this is the opportunity that you can simply unmute yourself and ask the question to Ian. He is one of the seasoned contributors and he's a component lead, so you will get answers from him. Does anyone have any question around whatever we discussed? You can ask. We'll wait for about 30 seconds. Right. If you're not getting them now, you also can refer back to this recorded session. So we'll be uploading that. And then also we'll be making the slide that Ian was presenting available into this link. We'll also be posting it in the community forum, and then we'll also be updating you in the Slack. So here goes that. Talking about end-to-end testing, I remember that we had one project for Google Summer of Code this season, so 2025. And if I'm not wrong, the results will be out today itself. So by the, I guess, 11:59 p.m. IST, the results will be out. And we have this particular project on Playwright. And if you take a look at the project, there is a description. And if you see, Ian is one of the mentors there. So once again, if you want to take a look at more of these projects, they all not might be getting into GSOC, but yeah, they are help wanted and open areas where you can, pick and be impactful in. So I figured that I'll just simply drop the link in the chat. So it looks like that was it for the call today. Again, the training series that we are running, all the details around it and the upcoming ones, you will find them in this GitHub issue. So we'll be planning on the next sessions on Meshery UI or server or models that will be announced and updated into this GitHub thread. So that's right now being shared in chat. And just like Ian said, there are any number of issues open right now, which are help wanted. So basically by help wanted, I mean, there's a label on them that's called help wanted. You also can filter them out based on the labels. So if I search for UI, so component UI, this is a label that you can use to filter out the UI issues. And similarly, it goes for tests. So we'll also, before we take any questions, in the end, we'll be having a Q&A session where you can ask anything that you want to on the community and projects. For now, let's quickly take a look if we are missing anyone from the pull requests tab. There are 15 of us on the call, and like majority of you already have that up, and we are, so all of them are not having the check mark, but since I'm taking a look, I'm sure that many of you are already have submitted your pull request. If any one of you are missing from this pull request and have not created, do let me know and I'll make sure that you know of the activity. So basically, there is this thread, GitHub folder. Let me quickly share that in chat. And we are also supposed to create a file, and inside that file you can include detail about you, for example, a link to your the wonderful introduction from Chetan. So yeah, you can take inspiration from the existing pull request. All right, so I'll take a look at the chat and we'll see if we have any questions. So there's a question from Chetan about apply for LFX summer. So Chetan, there is okay, I'm also sure that it will be updated on our programs page. For example, if you go to this Meshery site, there are programs like Clarity Foundation and Shaya. This is the LFX one. Yeah, the timeline for this year. This is how it goes. I'm not sure if this is correct. Yeah, it may be because May 14th. So this is sourced from CNCF mentoring GitHub repository, and we strictly follow that timeline. So this is something that's exactly what you will find on the GitHub of CNCF mentoring. So do refer to that. You can also take a look at all the projects that will be made available in here. And in case you want to take a look at the past ones, again, you can refer to this page. So hopefully that answers your question, Chetan. Thanks a lot, Ian. So I guess, Chetan, it's exactly the same as you can see in this page, the one on Lakefire side. I think it's exactly the same. Any other question from anyone? You also can sound off in the Slack community on like in the CR channel. And in fact, there will be a build and release call just about 4 minutes from now. Let's quickly talk about meetings. So I'll quickly give you an overview on the weekly meetings that we have. So on Monday, we have sites meeting, and as the name suggests, it is focused on sites. On Wednesday, we have Meshery development meeting. So about Meshery project, its roadmap, and various issues and pull requests that we are working on. That also includes announcements and any events that we are participating. So those go like they are covered on Wednesday. On Thursday, that is today, we have this weekly newcomers meeting. And also now, like in the latter half of this meeting, we run this training series. So just like we did end-to-end testing today, we did other components in the past weeks. So for example, if you want to take a look at those sessions, you simply can go to this page. And scroll down to this section, this table. So from here, like the sessions are there, like the slides and recording, and also the presenter, you can find them in. We will be updating it very soon with today's presentation. Let me quickly share this down in the chat. Yeah, so I think yeah, so I think I just missed it out that we were on this calendar page. So yeah, just like the weekly newcomers meeting, we have a meeting called build and release meeting. You also can think of it as CI meeting. It's on 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month, and there is one today. You can hop on to this meeting right after 3 minutes. The link will again be in here. So I think I already shared this, but I'll quickly do that once again. And there are any number of resources that you can refer to. For example, Meshery Playground, which is a place for you to learn DevOps and cloud concepts hands-on in a visual, environment where you can play around with all the CNCF projects and technology and like the cloud providers too, like AWS and GCP. So this is the place that will get you going with the introduction and what the project is about. And then there are a number of other that again, I highly recommend that you all check them out. One, like this link to forum, I'll quickly share. So if you have any question around, let's say you are making any code changes and you want some explanation or help, or if you are setting up the project and you want, you are running into an issue and you want others to help you out there, you simply can sound off with those questions in the community forum. It goes at this location. I'll quickly drop that down in the chat again. And you're welcome to participate in the existing conversation that's already going in. So for example, this one by Aarti, and there may be some, thread. Yeah, so if you think you can answer this question, please feel free to go ahead and do that. And last but not the least, if you have not yet started the repository, the GitHub repo, let me quickly drop this link down in chat. So basically, I would request, if you have not yet tossed in star, please do. We are like 7,000 stars now and are gearing up for 8,000. So this will be a contribution from you. So I think that was it, folks, for today's call. Assuming we have no more questions. So Soumya, I'll make sure that I follow up with you on the GitHub thread. So we'll make sure that your PR get merged. All right, so I'll see you all next Thursday or on the other side's meeting or any other meeting. But for today, we'll wrap it up here, folks. Yeah. Bye, everyone.